Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 93 of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, joined tonight by my co-host, Mr. Evan Birchfield. You know him at Evan Birchfield on Twitter, and we are here to break down that Panthers win, another dominant performance by this team. 2 in a row now, which we have not seen at all this season. We haven't even really seen more than 1 or 2 good games all season, so this is a pleasant surprise for Falcons fans. Unpleasant surprise for Panthers and Saints fans, but that's part of the turf. And we'll be breaking down that game. We'll be talking a little bit about if we think this recent winning attitude and solid play by both sides of the ball is going to be something that can be sustained. And then we'll also, of course, get into some newsy stuff, injury updates, and talk about that Bucs game coming up on Saturday. So we'll get into all that stuff, and as always, if you guys have questions, throw those in the chat, and we will get to as many as we can. But yeah, before we jump into everything, Evan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Ready to talk about this team, and we'll see what's going to happen. But I mean, you got to enjoy these last 2 weeks. Ignore the record, and it's nice to see the Falcons not only beating people but dominating them, and it's only makes it more confusing. But we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, it is confusing. It's a little bit weird, but at the end of the day, it's nice to watch winning football for a change. In the midst of that 6-game losing streak, it got pretty dark in these parts. So I'm not upset that we can actually write about some wins, because writing about 6 straight losses, it gets it starts to wear on you a little bit. So happy to see the team actually play well. Welcome Don Emery, Dylan Thomas, Robert Kelly, all these regulars. Welcome back, guys, and to the new folks, welcome as well. Don, I did see your question on Twitter, and we will get to that shortly. So I did want to make sure that you knew that I got it. I did. But yeah, let's start things off with this Panthers game. I mean, Adnan and I talked about it from an instant reaction standpoint, so I wanted to kind of give you the floor first to kind of give us your reactions to that game. So I mean, for you, what was like one of your biggest takeaways from watching that very, very convincing win over another division rival?
It's kind of a bland answer, but the team seems to have a lot more energy. In the past games, I mean, losing definitely was going to hurt that, but they seemed more like they were playing like they were more of a 7-3 team, compared to being 2-7 at the time. So it was weird. It was like this team looks like they're, headed towards the playoffs, and they're really not. There's like almost no chance of it at this point. But that was my biggest takeaway, is like everybody looks excited. Everything we've heard about how the locker room environment's been, like, from like Gina Thomas, who is goes there and stuff. It's like everybody seems thrilled. So it's good to know that the players are happy, and they want to win for Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn, obviously, if you see anything on him, during the games on the sidelines, like, he's loving it and he wants to win, and it's good to see. We joked about it before about how like the Falcons will probably start winning because they're headed towards getting a top pick in the draft, and sure enough, that's what they've basically done. But I mean, at that point, I guess the Chase Young dream is over. But at least, for many of the games, we were all pretty much focused on, this team is, we were, I mean, I was even second guessing. It's like, we knew this team was talented, and there was that little thing of, are they not as talented as we thought?
Right.
So it's kind of reassuring to know, we're not all crazy. They are actually talented. Just who knows what that first, it's like you can't ignore the whole coincidence that, they changed their staff changes and stuff like that around. And then immediately the defense is all of a sudden getting sacks and making, turnovers and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it was a great game. I was more interested going into it to see how like Brian Hill was going to do as a starter. And it was kind of a letdown, to be honest. I mean, 15 carries, only 30 yards against the Panthers' run defense, who's been statistically one of the worst in the league. I think they're like 29th in run defense. So
Yeah.
that was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he did technically score on one, but it was like brought back by, I think, like a Jamon Brown holding or something
Yeah,
like
he
that.
pancaked someone, and technically by the letter of the law,
Yeah,
it was illegal.
yeah,
But
and Allison ended up sneaking in, and that would have made his day look a little better, but still, 15 carries, 30 yards is not a good look. But then on the other side, Hooper not being there, it's the ball got shared around more, and Calvin Ridley stepped up and had a great day. Great day. 8 receptions, 143 yards, and a touchdown. Julio did a Julio day. Like everybody, stepped up. Ryan only had 1 touchdown. It wasn't like he dominated, but he didn't do anything to lose the game either. And then the Kenyon Barner punt return was great to see. He must have had this game, being a former Panther, circled on that calendar, and it was just a great day. I mean, when we were in the preseason, I think a lot of folks probably, and that was before we knew what this team was actually going to do, probably saw coming out of the bye, going to New Orleans, going to Carolina, or going to Charlotte as, probably losses, because that's usually tough places to play. And we went into both places and dominated. It wasn't even like a close game. Like we just went in there and dominated. So
yeah,
makes it more confusing, as we talked about. So we'll see going forward. But yeah, it was a great day. And I mean, Christian McCaffrey had his Christian McCaffrey type day, but the key is they didn't score a touchdown. You're going to win games if you're holding the team, most of the time anyway. You're going to hold the team to field goals. And Christian McCaffrey still got his, and we still beat them 29-3. Like, that's incredible. So
yeah, and that kind of reminds me of like in the Saints game, Michael Thomas had a ton of yards. It just didn't matter, like it was like they were allowing one aspect of the opposing offense to kind of get theirs. With the Saints it was Thomas, and with the Panthers it was McCaffrey, but that was not enough for the opposing offense to be functional. Against the Saints, they were just really lights out on third down and just did a great job of getting off the field. Against the Panthers, it was the turnovers. They were just, Kyle Allen had just a horrible game. And he torpedoed some of their drives, almost single-handedly. But part of that absolutely had to do with the pass rush, which again was a huge factor. Another 5 sacks today. The Falcons in the last 2 games have now put up 11 sacks, and in their previous 8 games they only put up 7. So it's just ridiculous. It is. And I don't think they were as bad a pass rush as that 7 sack number kind of makes you think, because 7 sacks in 8 games is kind of a freakishly low number for how much talent they had on that defensive line. Grady Jarrett alone and all that, like it should have been more, and I think some of that was kind of a fluky type thing, but now we're seeing this explosion of sacks, which is also probably a little bit of a fluke in a good way. They're probably more like a 2 to 3 sack a game type of team overall, and this is just kind of self-correcting now with this sack explosion. And the same thing could be said about the turnovers. They only had 2 picks, both from a single game. Before this game, they got 4 today, bringing up to a total of 6. I believe they only had forced 4 turnovers heading into this game, which was also very, very low, and was part of the reason their turnover margin was just so god-awful. I believe they were minus 13 or minus 14 in turnover margin. So, obviously this game is going to help out in that regard. They're still, pretty far negative. It's going to take a long time to dig out of that hole, but steps in the right direction, certainly. And like you said, it's like, if it really was a coaching change, like, it's crazy how quickly it happened, and you have to expect that there was some extended time and extra practice from the bye week, and maybe it just happened to take this long for everyone to get on the same page. But whatever it was, just keep doing that, because I never want to see that defense from weeks 1 to 7 ever again. It was pathetic. They didn't know what they looked like they didn't know what they were supposed to do, and what's supposed to be a very simple defense. I think the one thing that I've noticed over these last 2 games is, I don't think I've noticed them play any 3-4 packages at all. Like, I think the 3-4 bear fronts and all that stuff is basically gone. It's been almost entirely 4-3 fronts, which is what Dan Quinn's defense usually is. So, I don't know if that has something to do with it or not, but it's refreshing to see them look good. and to play well. I miss that team. It's just a shame that it's taken 8 games to get here, and they've almost certainly played themselves out of the playoffs by being so bad in the first half. But it is fantastic, and the Kenyon Barner revenge game obviously came to fruition. He had a couple of nice carries and then that great punt return, which I believe was the first for the Falcons since Devin Hester in 2014. And that was just a beautiful return. It was, you could tell that he knew what he was doing. He took the perfect lane and got behind his blockers, and it was some very nice blocks on that return as well. Jamal Carter laid out the punter. I think that was nice. Just a good team win. And, you mentioned Matt Ryan, only having the 1 touchdown, but to me, I thought this was one of Ryan's best games of the season. I mean, definitely his best game in terms of his deep ball accuracy. Do you agree with that? Do you think this was kind of maybe him finally getting on the same page with these guys down the field?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is he's actually so good that when he has games like this, it's not that big of a deal. But it was a great game. 311 yards, a touchdown. The deep ball, I think it was either to Julio or Ridley, I can't remember one, but it literally just dropped right over his shoulder. You got to appreciate him especially while he's at this level of, he's still in his prime. When it's sad because I think when Matt Ryan's gone, fans will look back and be, the ones that were critical of him be like, well, he wasn't really that bad. So you just got to enjoy it. He's our, franchise quarterback, and he's, that's what he's doing. It's hard to sit here every week and try and tell people how good he is. Like he just is. They're not going to everybody wants to talk about like the when you mentioned his MVP and mentioned it was Kyle Shanahan and stuff like that. Like he helped, but Matt Ryan's Matt Ryan. If you cut him right now, pretty much every other team would be calling up trying to get him on the roster.
Oh no.
The claims would be insane, and but.
Yeah, if the Falcons had Ryan on the trade market going into the trade deadline, they could have easily gotten 2 first-round picks. At least. That would have been the starting point for negotiations. A team like the Bears would have sold their soul to get a hold of Matt Ryan.
Definitely.
And, you mentioned the Shanahan thing, and I think Shanahan really unlocked what was there with Ryan. Like, he really found a system that Ryan could excel in, and I think that was just a perfect match, and you saw, Ryan reach his absolute ceiling there. He could have even been better, I think, but it was just such an unbelievable year. And you see Shanahan doesn't just turn any quarterback into that, though. Like, look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo's having a good year, but he hasn't approached the heights that Ryan has, and they've had 3 years together, obviously some, truncated by injuries, but if Shanahan could turn any quarterback into an MVP, he would have by now. But the only one has been Matt Ryan. And I think we can agree that it was a combination of the two. I think that year clearly Matt Ryan was the best quarterback in the league, and it doesn't appear that he's that this year. And he has some very stiff competition with, Patrick Mahomes being basically unbelievable, Lamar Jackson being basically unbelievable. But I think, the stats bear out. The thing about Ryan that's always stood out to me is that he's found a way to make it work no matter what offense he's playing in. He was under Malarkey for several years as like a game manager and like a run-heavy attack. He finally got a chance to be with a pass-heavy attack with Cutter initially, and they put up, crazy numbers in 2012. Shanahan came in, and it was what it was. It was elite. Sark came in. He kept that offense afloat, especially during that first year where it was not very good schematically. It still was a functional offense. And then, back under Cutter again, he's basically been keeping this thing alive. I think that makes him special. I know some people like to, bash him for that. But, I don't know. I think I give him extra credit for being good under so many different offensive coordinators. I don't know where you stand on that whole debate, but...
Yeah, no, that's certainly right. And, if for some reason Cutter ain't back next year, it's just going to be another, he's going to have another offensive coordinator. It's just something, and eventually I assume by now he's just kind of used to that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's sad. And that's why, I think if we are to move on from Quinn, and, we'll get to that a little bit more later in the show, that I think we're all in favor of going after an offensive head coach, because if he gets into that type of groove again with an offensive coordinator like he did with Shanahan, we don't want that person just walking out the front door and going and helping some other team. Like, that person needs to stay in the building and be our head coach. So, hopefully that is something that the team heavily considers. But yeah, I getting back to the performance of the offense overall, I mean, I agree with you that it was pretty disappointing what we saw from Brian Hill. I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm totally out on Cutter. I think he's completely incapable of calling a run game. I mean, that's been his MO everywhere he's gone in his coaching career. He just can't. He has no feel for the run game. His run game plan is, we're going to run up the middle, and then we're going to run it outside, and then we're going to run it up the middle, and then we're going to run it outside, and there's no cohesive plan to it. He's not setting anything up. It's just that he doesn't know how to call a run game. And he took an opportunity to gash a team that was allowing over 5 yards per carry, and the Falcons turned in 1.5 yards per carry against them. And that's just unacceptable. So
that's what's puzzling about the whole thing is, I do the fantasy previews on Friday, and Brian Hill, I was so high on him because anytime he came in, last week, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think he had, when he came in for Freeman, didn't he have 20 carries for 60 yards or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't efficient, but it was decent.
Yeah, it wasn't crazy good, but he, there was times where he was flashing, and, he came in, so that's a little different. But now he's going up against the Carolina Panthers, who, as I said earlier, one of the worst run defenses. Over the last 4 games before that game, they were allowing the most points, fantasy-wise, to opposing running backs. So I'm like, man, I don't know how you... And Brian Hill's look good in the limited action, and then he comes out and pretty much drops a goose egg. And that's not it's, like you said, Cutter running up the middle, but it was a little wow. So maybe we'll see more Allison now, too. I mean, he only got 4 carries. Barner got 2 carries, and, he looked okay. But, it'll be interesting going forward if they, want to feature Hill as still the primary back, or, I guess it'll depend. I mean, against Tampa, who knows? That game could be a shootout, or
right.
The Falcons defense steps up, and we beat them 30-3 this time, and it's okay, well, and they'll just run the ball more. Who knows? But
yeah. Oh, Solaire, sorry to hear about your plane, buddy. It's all right. Well, the video will be here for you when you get to some quality internet. So we'll miss you. We'll miss you tonight. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't really blame the running backs. Basically every single running back in this offense has looked bad, and I think it's Cutter. Because these same guys, with arguably worse blocking last year, I think are just tanking because, my thoughts on Cutter and his ability to coach the run game. He can't. So that's basically where I'm at. James Carpenter's never been a guy that's been known as a good run blocker. He's more of a pass protector, and that's probably more valuable. So I get it. But, when Lindstrom's back, maybe we'll see another boost there, but I don't think we're really going to see this running game become productive again until we get Cutter out of here. And, we'll see if that transpires or not. But one other player on offense, you mentioned Ridley. Obviously, that's awesome. In a game where we really needed him to step up with Hooper out, he absolutely delivered. Great fantasy day, too. I think he was the second or third highest scoring wide receiver. So that's always nice to see. I don't think we have to worry about the Falcons, being unable, without Sanu, there were some people who were like, oh, is this offense still going to be productive? And yeah, it is. Obviously Gage is not quite up to Sanu's level yet. He's a little bit of a different type of option there, but when you have such a good tight end in Hooper, I think Sanu's value was a little bit reduced because Hooper can do a lot of the same things that a big slot can do. He's very good over the middle. He can be that third down chain mover. And then you have another good option, it seems like, in Jaden Graham, who only got a few opportunities, but, converted them all into first downs. You can tell he's a good athlete. He's just a really natural receiver. He knows what to do with the ball in his hands, and I was impressed by Graham as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm feeling comfortable, if they can keep Hooper, I'm feeling comfortable with just having Graham as the tight end too. I don't know how you're feeling there, or if you feel like they need to invest in another tight end at this point.
I mean, I loved Graham during the preseason, and then, even in this game in specific, because Luke Stalker didn't have any targets. So they pretty much shied away from the tight end position because Graham had only 2 targets for 2 receptions and 23 yards. So I believe one was a 12-yard catch and one was 11. Like he's doing in very limited, he's not got like a lot to look at here, but I mean, 2 receptions, 23 yards, like that's pretty good. Those are first down plays. So, maybe Ryan's trying to get, trust with him and like, maybe going forward, maybe next week that'll be 5 receptions instead of 2.
Right.
But I mean, all the action he's had has looked pretty good. Let me look right here real quick. Because, I mean, he really hasn't had that many. So he's caught 4 passes for 55 yards. So he's averaging 3.8 or 13.8 per reception. Like, that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
The only person he's behind is Julio and Ridley. And obviously they've, caught a lot more passes and stuff. But I think the big key is he's been targeted 4 times and he's caught all 4 of those passes. Like, those are pretty good numbers, considering. So maybe going forward, he'll get more trust out of Ryan and be used more. But also, I mean, they said Hooper was supposed to be out for like a month. Ian Rappaport, I think, said that, and Quinn didn't like go all in on that.
Right. Yeah, and that is something to monitor. I think in terms of whether he's going to miss more time, I think they basically
at this point.
Yeah. I guess we're not exactly sure how many games Hooper's going to miss, but I think they're saying, obviously not this week, maybe next week. They said he's like itching to get back on the field, so we will see.
And he wants to, this is a year where he's one of the, it sucks for him because he's playing at an elite level. He's one of the better tight ends, statistically. In the league prior to this. Obviously he missed a game now.
Yeah.
But you look at all the stats and he's pretty much up there with Travis.
Yeah, up there with Travis Kelce, I believe was where he was going with that. And yeah, I mean, I'm pulling up his stats right now. Yeah, I mean, he's very close. He was actually, I believe, leading the league in receptions before he got hurt. I think Kelce has since surpassed him in that number. Evan, hello? Oh, Lord, we lost Evan. Buffering. Sorry, folks. We'll get... Well, whenever Evan comes back, we will welcome him into the conversation. But something interesting, that we can look at is that the Falcons could potentially, if everything broke perfectly, and depending on how quickly Hooper comes back, they have 6 games left. So let's see. Gonna do some maths here. Hold on. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty likely that we could see 2,000-yard receivers this year for the Falcons. Because Julio's at 882, he's going to be over 1,000, no question. Calvin Ridley's currently at 614, and Hooper's at 605. So, neither of those guys need to have any particularly lofty numbers over the final games. Hooper's probably going to have to be a little bit more in terms of his production if he misses a lot of games, because there's 6 games left. So for Ridley to hit 1,000, he needs like 386 yards. So over 6 games, All right, I'm sure I fixed it. Yeah, for some reason the mic decided it wanted to mute itself, so I believe that is fixed now. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Apparently there's some sort of internet issue with Evan. We'll get him back in here as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I can hear you. It looks very blurry. You might, if you can hear me, Evan, you might just want to go ahead and like restart your computer because it seems like there's some sort of internet buffering issue. But
I can hear you.
Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah. Your video is not loading, but I just heard you too. So all right. Well, he's going to continue to troubleshoot. And we will go from there. All right. So like I was saying, I was just saying that the Falcons have a pretty good chance now to have 2,000-yard receivers. It seems most like... All right. Let's see. Can you hear me still, Evan? See, now I can't hear you. Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could hear you the whole time.
So yeah,
like, well, maybe I should come back.
No, I don't know what was going on. You were like all blurry too, so maybe there must have been some kind of internet. Yeah. You know, the internet hamsters needed a break or something. But
yeah, I don't know how far my rant went with about Austin Hooper. What was the last thing you heard? But
I don't think. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I heard you start talking about Austin Hooper, and then that was about where I got. So I will open the floor to you to wax poetic about Austin Hooper.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's all speculation, but maybe he'll come back for the Saints game on Thanksgiving. I mean, surely the team could use him, even as very, very unlikely. I mean, it's like if they win out, there's like a 16% chance that they could make the playoffs in that case, but they would need a lot of help.
Yeah.
With the Saints losing most of their games but one or something.
Yep.
They're definitely losing out to because I did an article on it. If anybody's interested, basically like the predictions. They did 200,000 like different scenarios, and basically it came down to if the Falcons win out, there's a 16% chance. So currently there's like a less than 1%. Probably. Yeah. So like, don't get your hopes up and stuff like that. But
definitely not.
If the team wins out, I mean, pretty much be pulling against like the Vikings. I think the Vikings, the Seahawks, maybe the 49ers, and definitely the Saints. If any of those teams lose out, it's good for us. So I mean, chances are that ain't happening. But
no. There's, I believe, 5 NFC teams with 8 wins right now. So this is basically the worst possible scenario for a 9-7 team.
That's what happens when you lose to the Titans and the Cardinals.
And it would be one thing. It'd be one thing if we had beaten like the Vikings and the Seahawks, and we were like, okay, well, we have the tiebreaker too. So like, if we match them at 9-7, then maybe we could get in on a tiebreaker. But we don't even have that. We lost to them head to head, so now it's even. So they have to lose out, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If it does happen, it'll be some kind of freak thing, and then we'll probably win the Super Bowl because of it, because it's just such a weird scenario. But
wouldn't that make up for 28-3 though?
Oh yeah,
if they somehow made the playoffs.
They make the playoffs at 9-7. Run roughshod, win their final, 9 games or whatever, or 8 games, run roughshod through the whole NFL, take out the 49ers on the road, and then go and just dominate in the playoffs and then win the Super Bowl. It would just be, that would be worth everything. But,
yeah,
reverse,
we will. It's like reverse luck or something.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just one of the, we're in line for some of that luck right about now, I think. But, yeah, like I was saying about, the Falcons could potentially have multiple 1,000-yard receivers this year. Julio's almost a shoe-in to get his 1,000. Yeah. Calvin Ridley only needs to average, I think, like 60-something yards per game over the final games to actually get his 1,000. And then Hooper, it depends on how quickly he comes back. But
because I think he's at
600.
608. So he's just below Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Like him and Ridley are pretty much at the neck and neck.
Right.
So, I mean, it's definitely possible. That would be insane, to be honest. But
Yeah. I mean, I don't think all three of them are going to make it, but two of them definitely will. Like, I think Ridley and Julio will both hit 1,000. But, if Hooper comes back, like, next week, there's a chance, certainly. But if
he would have to, like, go off.
Yeah, I mean, all it takes really is, like, one explosion game for, like, 200 yards, and then you can make it. But, like, that's more difficult than people probably want to believe. But that's still cool.
Julio, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe Julio, I'm checking real quick. He should be nearing, because he passed Roddy White in yards. I can't remember which game it was, but that was earlier this season. He needs less than 50. He needs like 40 something, I think, receptions, or 39 receptions.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do the math, but he's getting close to passing Roddy for receptions in a career. So
that's another cool milestone. We'll see. I don't know if he'll make it this year, but that would be a lot over 6 games. I think. Yeah, Julio's only got 60 catches so far, so we would have to basically.
It's 51.
Yeah.
So I mean,
probably not this year. 6. So.
6. So. 8.5 per game. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, I mean,
it's possible if the team is like really pass heavy.
And he has like a 12 reception game. Or
right.
Something
Yeah.
like
that would definitely help in that regard. But it's cool that that they're that's one thing Dirk Cutter's good at, is getting on big passing numbers. So we'll see what happens there. I know Don is asking about our schedule next week in terms of the shows. I'm not sure exactly if we'll have either of the shows Thursday night. Probably not, because of Thanksgiving, and I know I'll be at a Thanksgiving thing, and I think most people will be at Thanksgiving things. On Sunday, I don't know if there will be a post game. It depends on if I'm at the game or not. We're still trying to figure out the credential stuff. But if I'm at the game, I think they generally don't appreciate me broadcasting like from the press box. So that would be probably kind of hard to sneak that in. But so possibly Wednesday, but Thanksgiving Day probably not. Either way, we'll be back the week after that. So that's
or maybe a special Saturday or something.
Yeah, I mean, just
I'm down to help out if you can just let me know. But if you decide to have like even if it's just like a quick 30-minute, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we could possibly do something that weekend or whatever, but we'll keep you guys in the loop, certainly. And this is a good time to plug that if you subscribe to the channel, you will get notifications whenever we publish a showtime. So that's a good way to keep up with it too, if you want to make sure you don't miss out. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this offense does over the final part of the season. But even if we do get some lofty numbers here, I'm still very much on the Dirk Cutter's got to go bandwagon. But yeah, I mean, I guess the big question now is like, do we think the Falcons could win out or get close to that at this point, or are these 2 weeks kind of more of just a nice enigma that we're seeing? So what do you think about?
What was that?
Oh, do you think the Falcons can keep winning at this point?
I mean, if the defense is for real, and the last 2 games have showed that they are, I mean, I don't see why not. As weird as that is, it's like, do you want to buy into them? I kind of am. I mean, the turnovers, the sacks, what was really great to see was the Panthers got down into the red zone, and when Trufant had his interception, it was in the end zone. So, I mean, it's not only you're getting turnovers, you're literally preventing touchdowns in that case. It's not like it happened on the other side of the field. Like, you're keeping points off the board. So, I mean, you look at – let me pull up – do you have the schedule in front of you? Sure, I know we got Tampa and then the Saints. Yeah. And then I think it's Carolina after that. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we have Tampa, Saints, Carolina, all at home. Like, those are definitely winnable. I mean, we already beat the Saints in Carolina at their home.
Yeah.
At San Francisco, that's probably a loss.
If we're being honest,
Yeah, but I mean, there's no reason we can't beat Jacksonville the following week in Atlanta and at Tampa, where we won last year, literally in the same week. So, I mean, can they win out? Definitely. But, I think it's going to come up to that San Francisco game.
Well, yeah. If they win that game, then I believe. I'll believe anything you say.
Yeah. And then, imagine them winning all of those games I mentioned and then not making the playoffs because of one or two games where they decided to lose against the Titans or the Cardinals or,
Right.
I mean, you can't do anything about it. It's all hindsight at this point. But, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, though, I think they got a good chance to win out. I have no reason to believe they won't win the next three. San Francisco, that's a tough one to swallow because not only is the 49ers pretty good and Shanahan's got them going well, he knows us and he knows, how certain he knows the offense. He knows the – any sort of little problems that anyone has, he's probably going to have a good idea of how to stop Ryan and stuff. And it's in San Francisco, so probably going to struggle there, but it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know some folks are asking, in the chat, I believe Robert Kelly asked, do we want to win out and miss the playoffs, or do we want to kind of tread water here? I assume Robert Kelly's saying basically continue to look competitive, but keep losing to a certain extent and preserve that top 10 pick. Because if they go 9-7, they're falling out of the top 10. They're going to be in the
what
mid to late.
What are we currently, the 8th pick
we're
or
8th.
Something like that?
Yes, we're 8th right now. So if we finish in that 6 and 10 range, we'll probably stay right about at this draft pick. It really depends on how bad the teams are ahead of us, but it. Because the Bengals may not win a game, so they're probably gonna have the first. Yeah, they're that's.
It's hard to want to watch them lose. It's just these last 2 weeks have been freaking exciting.
Yeah.
Even as dead as a season this is, I don't know. I get both sides of the argument of losing out, but there's so many teams that do that, and literally it doesn't really benefit them at all. You look at teams like the Browns. The Cardinals until recently are starting to benefit off of it. But you don't want to be, it's not always a good thing to be there towards the top. Sure, your chances of getting a better player increase, but you at the end of the day, we just want to see our team win, even if, I guess the season's toast, but I don't know. It's just
I still like to watch winning football,
Yeah, it's hard to watch them on Sunday look like garbage, especially after these two games we beat the shit out of our opponents, our divisional rivals, two of the teams probably most Falcons fans hate more than anyone. And we did it in their houses. So it's hard to and I don't know that, first off, the team, the players and Dan Quinn, they don't want to lose. They're not going to lose on purpose, because Dan Quinn knows, his seat was hot during the bye week. It was, I don't know if it's ever been hotter. Everybody expected him to be gone. And then winning these last two, it probably cooled off a little bit, but he definitely wants to keep winning, because if for some reason they ran the table, then there's a real conversation of, okay, maybe he should be back. That's an interesting turnaround. And I'm not saying he should be back. I'm saying
there's a case for it at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely entertain the idea, because that's, regardless of what you want, that's impressive to suck that much during the first half. Usually teams will do better during the first half. It's the longevity of the season that breaks them down. To then have a bye week and just come out swinging at everybody. But that's to be determined, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and we, it's tough because I think we were all kind of ready for new blood, and I think most of us still are. But there's no discounting. If it's a really, if he does win, 8 straight games to close out the season, it's a lot harder to move on, and that could be good or bad. Maybe the good is that we find out that, hey, maybe Raheem Morris should be our defensive coordinator. This guy deserves a promotion. He's actually really good. Jeff Ulbrich can, probably deserves a promotion too, to running game, defensive running game coordinator or something like that. And then, obviously, I hope Dirk Cutter gets fired, and I think that will probably happen either way. I just don't
I'm
see.
hoping Dimitrov's gone.
I think Dimitrov's gone no matter what. Yeah, that's
like if they decided to keep Dan Quinn and got rid of Dimitrov, I'd be okay with it just because I'm not as high on Dimitrov as a lot of people. It's all speculation, but like I don't see why Dan Quinn would bring back Cutter with his job being literally on the line and think that was the better, the best person for the job to run his offense. It's like that still puzzles me. I think
that was a big mistake.
I think Dimitrov had to have had some sort of hand in that. Being semi-familiar with Cutter. So I mean, we'll see, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to consider because like it would be a little bit weird for them to have this historic turnaround and keep the head coach, but like fire the offensive coordinator after one season. But I think it's the right move.
Well, I mean, these last two games though it's not like they've been scoring 40 or something. The defense is what's really been, the offense has been fine. But I mean, the problem is there's so much talent on this offense that me or you could probably get them to score 20 points.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you're making, I don't know, the Redskins score almost 30 every week or something like that. Right. Like with the talent we have on offense, you should be scoring. But against who was it? One of the teams. I mean,
the Titans. They scored 10 points against the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, you can't overlook stuff like that.
Right.
And surely, I mean, the defense. You look at how many. I mean, we allowed 53 to the Texans, and then combined 12 points to the Saints and Panthers. Like that's mind-boggling. But at the same time, it's the defense that's really stepped up lately, and there's plenty of time for the offense to step up. But I haven't seen anything from this Cutter offense to be like, well, no, we got to keep him. He's definitely improving things. He's just kind of a placeholder to me.
Right, and I think the one thing that might lead to Cutter's firing more than anything is that Quinn, as whatever you think about the analytics of the run game, that it's not that important, so on. I think being able to be balanced when you need to be is important. I don't think establishing the run is all that important or whatever, but being able to like get productive runs in favorable situations, I think is always nice to have. And Quinn came into this offseason emphasizing that they wanted to fix the run game, and that is one part that Cutter has absolutely failed at in every way. Like the Falcons are in the bottom 5 of rushing offenses.
Well, that threat has to be there. Not that you're going to just use the run game, but you want the opponent to at least be fearful of it. And there's no reason for anybody to be fearful of our run game at all.
No, it's just...
Because it can open up the pass.
It can benefit. I mean, you see that with Shanahan. Like, he doesn't necessarily run the ball that many times a game. I mean, he certainly does more than a lot of the really pass-happy coordinators, but it's more about the efficiency of the run game than needing to run, 30 times a game or anything like that. That's where Shanahan differs from someone, like the Washington head coach, interim guy that's like, oh, we're going to run 35 times a game and you can just try to stop us. And everyone's like, okay, and then Washington's like the worst, second worst team in the league only because the Bengals are like a train wreck. But, you have, like, I think being able to run when it's favorable is something that you want from your offense. It shouldn't be the focal point, but it should be something that you can do. And I think Cutter has just failed so miserably in that regard that if Quinn really is serious about wanting to get the run game going, then he needs to find a new offensive coordinator for that. And
it's not just us. Like, at Tampa, he had no history of a run game.
No.
So this is something that's been a part of his coaching resume. So it's not like we're expecting it to all of a sudden get better and for us to all of a sudden have a, decent run game. Like,
yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice.
It would be nice, but chances are it ain't happening.
Yeah, I mean,
if it didn't happen against the Panthers, who, like we've said a couple times on the show, one of the worst run defenses in the league.
5 yards a carry that they average allowing. So
yeah.
So I think
chances are it ain't going to be happening anytime soon.
No. So that's probably the one thing that's going to get him fired more than anything is his absolute inability to call the run game functionally. Maybe we'll see it get better when Chris Lindstrom comes back in, but, they shelled out a lot of money for those 2 free agent guards, and both of them have been healthy over the last 2 games. So I don't think, the offensive line is as big of an issue as people might want to make it out to be. maybe it'll be different when Lindstrom gets back because hopefully he's an elite offensive guard, but we can't blame the offensive line forever. And I think history has shown, like you said, Cutter never had a good running game in Tampa Bay. Didn't have a good running game here when he was the offensive coordinator ever. I believe the only time he ever had a more than like an average running game was when he had Maurice Jones-Drew as his running back in Jacksonville. So, yeah, of course, when you have like an all-pro, then, he can get a good running game. But, that's not great. And they're probably not going to get a running game going against Tampa Bay either because Tampa Bay is the number one run defense for as much as that's helped them, which is basically not at all. They are the number one run defense. So, probably not getting much going there. Luckily, they're like the worst pass defense, so it evens out. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can get some new blood in here. Hopefully, Kubiak is ready to be an offensive coordinator again, and we can finally lure him here. Or maybe he wants to be a head coach, and I would say okay. But yeah. But yeah, I mean. So let's say the more likely scenario, which I don't think the Falcons are honestly going to win out. I think that they could get close to winning out. I just don't think that they're going to win all their games. It's a lot of games to win in a row.
Yeah.
For a team that's 3-7.
I would be. I mean, it's hard to pick against them based on the last 2 weeks because I would have during that bye week. If you told me, Evan, I'll bet you $500 that the Saints and Panthers both beat the Falcons, I would have been like, yep, sign me up for that. Definitely. I mean, the Saints, who saw us going into New Orleans? Like,
nobody.
People see that we had a bye week. People forget they also were on a bye week. They had just as much time to study us as we did them. Maybe they overlooked us, sure, but I mean, we beat them. Like, we really beat them.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't a close game.
We spanked them. I mean, it was not close.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to bet against this team. I mean, although, so I'm saying the next 3 games. Home, we've got Tampa, New Orleans, and then Carolina. We can beat those opponents. We already beat 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then at San Francisco, even as good as the team has looked, that's probably a loss. And I don't think anybody's really optimistic about us heading into that game. But we have 3 games to show it. I mean, if for some reason we lose to the Saints and Panthers at home, and come back down to earth, that's one thing. But I mean, that could be a pretty interesting game. It's unless they end up flexing it or changing it to something else. It's 4:25 in the afternoon. Like, that's national, pretty much national TV. So that'll be interesting. But I mean, that's the only one I see right now, knowing what we saw the last 2 games, where I'm like, that's probably a loss. But I think we really saw what New Orleans is, and we've taken their best players out of the game. I mean, Michael Thomas and McCaffrey, as we mentioned, they still got theirs, but it didn't matter because it's not like they were scoring all these touchdowns. Like, we were keeping them out of the end zone, forcing them to field goals. And that's why you're going to win games. With San Francisco, it's going to be a little bit different because there's not a Michael Thomas or Christian McCaffrey really on that team. There's George Kittle, but aside from that, it's like Tevin Coleman, Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, they don't have like that, aside from Kittle being like one of the better tight ends in the league. There's not that elite guy, and that's no disrespect to them, but if that makes sense.
Certainly.
So, I mean, that'll be a little different, especially with Kyle Shanahan's able to just use anyone. Like, he could get 10 yards out of me if he had to, probably.
And a pinch.
So I mean, that one's going to be a very tough game. But then, Jaguars at home after that in Atlanta. They got Nick Foles back. We'll see what happens there. But then at Tampa, like, we can win pretty much all of these remaining games. The San Francisco one, as I mentioned, tough, but
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 games left. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up like 4-2 or something. I think that's probably 3-3 or 4-2 based on how they played. That's probably, the most likely scenarios. I think winning out it's really hard to do. It's really hard to win 8 straight games in the NFL. It just is. So, I kind of doubt that, but yeah, I mean, could they beat the Bucs this weekend? Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm sure that they will have a good chance of doing that. Their 2 most difficult games, like you said, it's probably the Saints game on Thanksgiving and then, the 49ers game. If they win the Saints game, then it's like, okay, well, this running the table thing,
plus, people forget we're on Thanksgiving. We're wearing our throwbacks, which we always, as beautiful as they are, we suck in them for some reason.
Yeah. So,
and it's on primetime TV. Like, everything's stacked against us. So if for some reason they win that game, I'm not doubting them. I'm already stopped kind of doubting them because those last two games were impressive. But, that would be a big victory, and it would only be more puzzling because why the hell weren't they doing this the first season?
It'd be even more infuriating, exactly.
And I feel like that's why they will do it, because it will only confuse us more.
Yes. So, it's all about chaos,
It is. It really
just bring about the most chaos possible. But yeah, I mean, I hope that they keep winning. I think it's most likely they're going to finish in that like 6-10, 7-9 range, which would be quite a turnaround from 1-7, obviously. But that if they do finish in that range, they'll still have that relatively high draft pick. They'll still have a shot at a good player, and we'll just have to go from there. But yeah, I think that the big question of the show, obviously from the title, can the Falcons keep winning? I think the answer is yes. Will they win out, though? Probably not. I think that's basically where we're at. But yeah, I do want to take time to answer some questions. I know we had one from Don Emery on Twitter, so we'll get to that one real quick first. And Don Emery asked us, all right, so with Ricardo Allen playing so well at strong safety, will that affect the team's future plans for Keanu Neal? So, Evan, I'll let you kind of take the first crack at that. What do you think about the possibility of the team? Financially, they're in kind of a tough spot next year. We've talked about Ricardo Allen being a potential cap casualty, but Keanu Neal is on a fifth-year option that can all be saved if they cut him before, the start of the league year or whatever. So, what are your thoughts on, strong safety and whether Ricardo might stick around and not Neal?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because as good as Neal is, I mean, he's a Pro Bowler, but, I'm not a doctor, so I don't understand how these injuries are going to affect him or not affect him. But, I mean, you have two straight seasons where, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the ACL, and then this year was the Achilles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Ricardo's was Achilles last year. But, I mean, that's just a lot of injuries on a young player. And will he be able to play to that normal level we're used to? I mean, I don't think anybody can really answer that right now. For him, because he's such a nice dude and everything, you want the best for him. So you want him to come back at full health and stuff like that. But, I mean, that's a tough one to answer because he has been playing well. Ricardo, I mean, you've seen the defense the last two games, like, makes you forget Neal was there. So, I mean, do I want him back? Sure. But, I mean, I'm more hesitant because of those two injuries.
Yeah.
I know that's a boring answer. But,
but I mean,
it's just tough to know right now because we don't know. I mean, it was only a couple games ago where he, had that injury. It's like, how do you come back from an ACL injury and then have a Achilles injury? Like, it's tough.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Players who get those injuries and they're never the same after that. So,
yeah,
I mean, if he comes, the team's going to know before any of us. But if he's looking good, okay, that's one thing. But, I mean,
yeah,
you can't ignore the two injuries. You just can't.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible that they, they decide to cut him and then they, offer him another contract, and basically immediately say like, okay, like we can't afford to pay you the $0.46 million fifth-year option, but hey, what about you take $3 million and come back for, a year, and then, if you play really well, we'll give you a long-term extension and if you're healthy and stuff. And if not, you're still making plenty of money, and all that good stuff. But, if you do that, you risk some other team swooping in to sign him.
Yeah.
But coming off a major injury like that, the chances are lower, so we'll see there. But the money is certainly enticing, particularly because none of it's guaranteed if you cut him before the start of the league year. So I think it's much more likely if they don't bring back Dimitrov. So like if Dimitrov's gone, the new GM has no loyalty to any of these players necessarily. So that would probably make it more likely that Neal would be gone, sadly. If Quinn's still here, probably less likely because, Neal's definitely one of Quinn's guys. So if they do decide to cut him, they'll probably make a strong push to like re-sign him at a lower amount. But yeah, that would be messy all around. So we'll just hope that he's coming back healthy and looks so good that they're like not at all concerned about his health. But that is something to think about. All right, so I know Robert Kelly had a question about Andy Dalton. So yeah, Andy Dalton wants out of Cincinnati. He's going to be gone from Cincinnati next year. Should we take Schaub's money from getting rid of Schaub next year and give it to Dalton to be our backup quarterback? I mean, if Dalton was willing to sign for like $2 million or $3 million, like what Schaub is making, sure, why not? But the fact is that Dalton's going to be a starter somewhere next year. Some team like the Bears is going to just sign him, and hope that he's better than Mitch Trubisky. Dalton isn't like anything overly special, but teams are willing to go after those types of quarterbacks as like bridge players. I think, for instance, like Miami, if they decide not to take a quarterback this year, with Tua's injury, I think it would be a logical spot for Dalton to go to on like a 2 or 3 year deal and kind of hold them over.
Get Tua,
right,
and then
they
take
also
him
have...
as a, because I mean I don't think anyone really knows what Tua's things going on right now. Like they're saying all the right things, but if for some, I mean that sounded bad. Hip, what was it? A hip thing or something?
Yeah.
So for some reason they needed Dalton to basically kind of like how the Cowboys, I think it was what was his name, Jalen Smith or whatever.
Yeah.
The linebacker. How they drafted him knowing he. I mean I think we saw Tennessee do the same thing with. Forgot his first name, but something Simmons, and he looked pretty good since. That might be a situation where they take Tua and they get Dalton as like that fill-in guy,
right?
And he's a lot better than what they're doing, dealing with now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he'll want to be a back. I mean, if he wants to be a backup and get paid backup money and come here, I mean that's fine.
Right.
But I just don't see it happening. I mean, you made some good points. A team like the Bears, who might be moving on from Mitchell Trubisky, and I mean, there's a couple other teams that would probably be like, oh, we'll make you a starter, and obviously he's going to want to go there. So yeah,
I mean, teams are still giving Case Keenum and Joe Flacco opportunities to start, so I think Andy Dalton will, have a chance as well. I don't think, Andy Dalton is what his team is. So if he goes to like a team with a good roster, I think he can be fine. If he goes to a team that's bad, he's going to be bad, and that's kind of who he is, and that's fine. But I mean, so yeah, if you wanted to be the backup here for like cheap, sure, that'd be great. But probably not going to happen for a variety of reasons.
They benched him on his birthday.
That was just rude. That was rude as hell. Yeah. So we are, of course, now out of range, more than likely, of Chase Young in the draft. Definitely. I know. I got to get at least one draft take in here at the end. So like picking at 8, there's an edge guy that people like in AJ Epinesa, and also kind of a defensive tackle in Derek Brown. And then of course I was talking about the team potentially being interested in like a top corner, but with the way the secondary is playing now, do you view corner as kind of not as big of an issue with the secondary kind of showing out these last 2 games?
I think it's going to, be more about is Trufant, able to continue. I mean, he looked good, but like Trufant's one of the more confusing players because it's like 1 week everybody hates him, the next week they're like, he's pretty good. But I mean, it's never bad to add depth in that sort of thing. So I guess it's going to determine, like, I think his name's the Auburn defensive tackle, Derek Brown or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't looked into the draft as much as you have. So you'll have to pretty much load this one. But I mean, adding a defensive tackle would not be a terrible idea. And from everything I've heard about him, he sounds like he's definitely like a top 5 or at least top 8 talent. So yeah, I mean, that's where I would look. Defensive backs, in my opinion, corners it's tough because it seems like 1 year they can be elite and then the next year just drop off.
Yeah.
There's been so many that have done that. Unless you're getting like a Jalen Ramsey or one of these guys who I mean, he's probably a bad example now that he's on another team, but
Right,
somebody who can stick around long term.
Or fetch you multiple first-round picks, so.
Yeah. I mean, like, even Trufant, for where we took him, is, has been solid for us.
Oh, yeah.
There's been no problems with him. Like, I mean, sure, there's been health issues and stuff like that, but if you're taking a corner, you need to be very confident, especially that high. Where I think like a Derek Brown, him and Grady on the front line, like, especially lately, as much as like Tax look good, we don't expect Vic to be back, but in that situation, I'd prefer defensive lineman. Because I kind of lean more towards that argument that's been popular lately about the and we had it a couple of weeks ago on the show, but what benefits the other more, the pass rush or the secondary? I kind of lean more towards the pass rush, but I can see both sides of the argument, so it just depends who the cornerback is that's there, but I would lean more towards a defensive tackle just because I mean, I've always wanted somebody really good. I mean, I know like Davison hasn't been terrible and stuff.
No, Davison's been good. He's been honestly the best free agent we signed. So.
Yeah, so having him with Grady and Davison, Derek Brown, that would be pretty interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I like Brown a lot at that 8 spot. I think he's a really good value there. He is, a difference-making defensive tackle. I don't think that's quite as big a need as like edge, because I think their defensive tackles mostly have been fine. Obviously Grady's really good, but the other guys I think are all fine. But Derek Brown would be like a huge addition of talent there. That would give them potentially like one of the elite interior tandems in the NFL with those two guys.
To run against.
Oh yeah, they're already like one of the NFL's better run defenses. I think the Falcons only allow like 3.7 or 3.8 yards per carry. And they've played a lot of good run offenses, so that's not a fluke. But yeah, the other guy that I'm kind of interested in at that 8 spot, I know a lot of people in the chat have mentioned him over time, is Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. He's like a linebacker safety hybrid. He's, in my opinion, I think he's just kind of a special player. He's like not quite as big as a traditional. He's really like tall. He's just more on the lighter side. He has experience. He's just an elite coverage linebacker. He's kind of just a unique, special talent. So I think at that 8 spot, particularly if someone like Derek Brown's gone, that would be something I would consider adding, because he can help you potentially at multiple spots. And I think him next to Deion Jones would be the NFL's best linebacker duo in a couple of years. So that's another spot, like kind of a non-traditional idea there. But that's something I've considered. And then I know someone in the chat asked about Marvin Wilson. I do like Marvin Wilson. I don't think he's really in that like top 10 consideration right now. He's definitely had like an awesome senior season. Marvin Wilson, for those who don't know, is FSU's nose tackle. He's like the latest in that kind of Dontari Poe line of players. Those freak athletes at nose tackle that are really large but also like super athletic. And a good pass rushers. I think Wilson has like 5 or 6 sacks from the nose tackle position this year and like an absurd number of tackles for loss. So yeah, I mean, with that second round pick, if they go in a different direction from defensive line, I think if Wilson's still there, that's certainly something to consider. But yeah, I think that's a little rich for the top 10. But they have some flexibility at that 8 spot. If there's teams that want to trade up for a quarterback, that's a potential trade down option. And I think, guys like Derek Brown, AJ Epinesa, Isaiah Simmons, like I said, I think those are all good options too. So there's certainly options, even if they miss out on Chase Young. And I think being at the 8th spot, it makes it a little easier to take other positions than like in the top 5. It's like, all right, if we're not getting like an elite player, like what are we doing? At number 8, I think you can afford to kind of be like, okay, maybe we could consider a non-traditional position here, like a linebacker or a defensive tackle or something. I know Robert Kelly asked about taking another offensive tackle like Andrew Thomas from Georgia. I don't think that's in the cards. I don't think moving McGarry to guard, he's so tall. It's really hard for really tall offensive linemen to play guard. It's just not ideal. I think McGarry's like 6'7" or 6'8". Like he's really tall. it's really hard to get good leverage on the inside when you're that tall. I just don't think that's ideal. So I think McGarry's been fine at right tackle. I don't really see a need to move him. So I think I would rather, spend a second or third round pick getting like a center that maybe can play guard in a pinch, as the eventual Alex Mack successor, and let that guy start kind of being groomed for a year or two. I would rather do that on day 2 than take an offensive tackle in the top 10. And there's a lot of teams that need offensive tackles, so it's possible that 3 offensive tackles could go before the Falcons pick at 8. It's that bad of a need. The Bucs are in desperate need of one. They might need a quarterback too. We'll see. The Jets need one really bad. There's a lot of teams. Honestly, Washington probably should take one at 2. They won't because they're incompetent, but they probably should. So there's a lot going on there. And it'll just depend, but Tua's injury might kind of hurt the Falcons indirectly too, because if he doesn't go in that top 4 range, that's one less quarterback taken, and that obviously means that one non-quarterback gets taken, and that makes it a little more difficult. But hopefully he'll be fully recovered, and the Dolphins are willing to go after him with that pick. It might end up helping the Dolphins out because they picking at 4 or whatever they're at now. That might have been kind of dicey as someone to trade up and that kind of thing. But if he's recovering from injury, maybe that makes it a little easier for him to fall into their lap. So, good luck Dolphins on that one. But, Robert Kelly, I do like Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin, but they would basically have to be picking in the late teens for them to have really a shot at him. He's the top interior offensive lineman. So unless they trade down, probably not, unfortunately. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up here in just a second. But before we do want to remind you guys to like the video if you haven't yet. That helps other folks on YouTube find the channel. I know we had a new subscriber in here tonight, Eric and ATL. Thanks for subscribing, man. We appreciate that. If you don't mind throwing a like, that's really helpful for us. And then, like I said, if you're not already subscribed, that will give you the ability to see the updates when the show goes live, so you can effortlessly know when we're broadcasting. Before we wrap up here, Evan, any final takes, anything you need to get out there?
No, just enjoy these remaining games. We finally have a defense that's winning games for us, so it's easy to get lost in the whole draft scenarios and stuff like that. But I mean, a lot's going to change between now and the draft anyways, even if the Falcons do lose out. So just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because we finally have a defense, so it's hard to ignore it and just want to focus on the draft and stuff like that. But
yeah,
just remember, me, you, and everybody listening and watching, we can't control anything they're doing. So Don't stress yourself out. Just enjoy whatever happens going forward.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully we'll enjoy some good wins and some very, very close losses. Very competitive. The team looks really good, and it's just, a slight loss. That way we get to see them look really good and also preserve that top 10 draft pick. That we'll just kind of tread the line there of being really good, but even the best teams lose some games, right? So we'll just hope for the best there, the way that works out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in on this Wednesday night. We'll be back Sunday. Well, I guess it depends on if I'm covering the game or not. If I'm at the stadium on Sunday, probably won't be broadcasting, but if I'm not at the stadium, I will. You guys will know. I will tweet something out to let you know. But until then, guys, we do appreciate you tuning in. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. My stuff. It's out there pretty much every day of the week. And also joining me, of course, is Evan Birchfield at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Anything you want to plug, Evan, that you're working on?
No, I did. I mentioned it earlier in the show, but I did do basically the Falcons' odds of making the playoffs, which still somehow are existing. So you can find that. You'd have to go on the Falcoholic.com and find that. You can follow me at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. On Friday, I have a fantasy article that comes out. But if you have fantasy questions or just want to talk about Falcons fantasy or whatever, find me on Twitter. I'll more than willing to talk to any of you, and appreciate you guys watching me and Kevin tonight. And Yeah, go Falcons. Maybe we'll beat the Bucs and make this season even more confusing.
Yes, just go 6-0 in the division and miss the playoffs. It'll be,
I'm ready for it. My soul is ready.
Oh man, it'll be one of the weirdest seasons of recent memory, but it's better than going 0-6 in the division. That's 100% true.
Yeah. Gosh, we could technically win out the division.
Oh yeah.
And that's bizarre.
That would be one of the only times in NFL history I think that's happened. So
it's such a Falcons thing.
That would be another illustrious, another illustrious historical mark for this team. But yeah, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. We will see you either Sunday or perhaps sometime next week. Just keep an eye on here. You can also follow the account on Twitter at Falcoholic Live for other updates too. But until then, guys, I'm Kevin. He's Evan. We will see you guys soon, one way or the other. So have a great night, folks.